Hello, I'm Peter Herbert. Welcome to the latest in our series of short CPD webinars. This month, we're looking at a topic we get lots of questions on here at Insight Training. It's to do with the disclosure of trustee and related party transactions in charity accounts. Here's the programme. We'll begin with an overview of the disclosure requirements and then look at 6 frequently asked questions, 3 to do with trustee related transactions and 3 to do with other related party transactions. And we'll finish off with a reminder of reporting requirements to the Charity Commission in relation to matters of material significance relevant to this area. Okay, let's begin then with our overview. So 2 slides here, one looking at remuneration disclosure requirements based on the charity SORP and one looking at the disclosure of other related party transactions. So requirement to disclose the aggregate employee benefits of key management and trustees. So key management personnel remuneration in aggregate, that needs to be disclosed in the notes to the charity's accounts, requirement of the charity SORP and indeed for that matter FRS 1 and 2, and that will include employers' national insurance contributions. The staff banding disclosures, so remuneration in £10,000 bandings for amounts paid in excess of £60,000, and that will exclude employer NI. If, as is the case in many charities, no one is paid more than £60,000, then the notes of the accounts will require a statement to that effect. And then trustee expenses, including costs reimbursed and costs paid direct to third parties. As the slide says, the disclosure requirements required for trustees relate equally to de facto trustees. De facto trustees effectively is where someone is in a trustee role without formally being one. And yes, where disclosures are required for trustees, if they're de facto trustees, they're in scope as well. I always think the concept of a de facto trustee is akin to a shadow director in an ordinary trading company. Okay, the other related party transaction disclosure requirements in summary in the SORP, and again, these will apply equally where they relate to trustees, to de facto trustees, as well as normal trustees. Remember that related party transaction disclosures per the SORP do require the names of the related parties to be named. And in that sense, I suppose the charity SORP is more onerous in what it requires than FRS 102. The charity SORP is very clear that a transaction involving a trustee or other related party will always be regarded as material. There's no playing the immateriality card to wriggle off the hook of disclosure. Where you've got amounts donated by trustees and other related parties, the disclosure there can be of the total amount, where for other related party transactions, generally speaking, it'll be individual amounts that will be disclosed. And where there are no related party transactions, this fact must be disclosed. The Charity Commission did some research into charity accounts back in August 19, and they found that in a number of respects, disclosures in relation to related party transactions were deficient. Importantly, in this particular respect, in that where there was no transactions disclosed, because there were no relevant transactions, that particular reference to there were none was missing, and in that respect, the accounts concerned were deemed to be deficient. For that reason, we always make sure on our charity updates, we do reinforce that point, we do reinforce that specific disclosure requirement. Okay, so that's our overview. Let's then get into our 3 frequently asked questions about transactions that specifically involve trustees. Here's the first one. So what are the implications for an auditor if a trustee is paid for services despite the charity's constitution specifically prohibiting it? There are, of course, very strict rules around payments being made to trustees of a charity. Very unlikely that a trustee would be paid for being a trustee. It's more likely that a trustee would be paid for other services provided to the charity, provided an appropriate protocol was followed, and that includes, based on charity law, the charity's constitution must not prohibit it. Now, here the payments being made despite that prohibition being in place. Now, the accounts can be finalised, the audit report can be signed off, but it's very important to ensure that that transaction is disclosed in the notes to the accounts of the charity concerned, along with a statement that that payment breaches or is in contravention of the charity's constitution itself. Both those things would need to be disclosed. Very likely, I think, in that situation as well, that what the auditor would do is make a report of a matter of material significance to the Charity Commission as well. And we'll come on and look at that particular requirement more generally in a few minutes' time towards the end of today's short session. Where more than one trustee has expenses reimbursed, can this be aggregated? What about payments for services? This, I think, is fairly straightforward. When it comes to expenses, the amounts concerned can indeed be aggregated and disclosed as one single total. I think we saw that on the previous slide. In relation to payments for services, I guess those are less common, potentially more contentious, and therefore payments for services would need to be individually disclosed in a way that the reimbursement of expenses would not. Finally, my charity client runs a hall, the trustees buy cleaning products, light bulbs, etc., and the costs are reimbursed. Do these expenses require disclosure? As we've already seen, you do have to disclose trustee expenses, whether the amounts concerned are paid by the charity and then reimbursed to the trustee, or whether they're paid direct, but those are expenses incurred for being a trustee. The expenses here are not expenses incurred for being a trustee, and these would not therefore require disclosure in the notes to the accounts of the charity concerned. Okay, let's now move on and look at our 3 frequently asked questions regarding other related party transactions. Here they are. So the first one, where key management consists of one person, can we avoid disclosing their remuneration? Now, as we saw on the earlier slide, whether you're applying FRS 102 or the SORP, the key management personnel remuneration disclosure is a total disclosure. It's not required by individual trustee or by individual member of the key management team. I guess where the problem arises, though, is that when the charity's trustees report makes really clear there actually is only one member of key management, yes, that remuneration is getting disclosed as a total, but if it's only one person, that will also therefore be their individual remuneration as well. And from a sensitivity point of view, that may well not be a number, therefore, the charity particularly wants to disclose in the notes to its financial statements. Key management personnel, by the way, as defined in the glossary of terms within the charity SORP, is those persons having responsibility and authority for planning, directing, and controlling the activities of the charity, directly or indirectly, including any director or trustee. So the SORP glossary does make clear exactly who key management are, but yes, for the smaller charities, there may well be only one, and therefore, although it's a total disclosure, that's very sensitive and something the charity may not want to specifically disclose in the notes to its accounts. Now, here's an example that I came across a couple of years ago of a non-SORP compliant disclosure in this area. So the charity concerned had done, it had very much embraced the requirement for the bandings disclosures, as we saw on the previous slide. But yes, where there is clearly one single member of key management personnel, although the banding disclosure is required, we do require the actual amount as well. And that, I think, reinforces the idea of how this can be in reality, day to day, a pretty sensitive area as far as charities are concerned. Okay, transaction number 2, or example number 2 here, are transactions with a subsidiary disclosable in the charity's accounts. Yeah, I think that's one where the answer is categorically yes. FRS 102 does give some dispensation there for not disclosing transactions with a subsidiary where it's wholly owned. You do not get a similar dispensation in the charity SORP. The charity SORP does indeed include a list of relevant related party transactions which would not require disclosure, but transactions with a subsidiary is not on the excluded list. So that one would definitely therefore require disclosure in the notes to a charity's accounts. And the final one here, a charity is connected with a championship football club. One of the club's directors is also a trustee. Would transactions with unrelated companies owned by the club's owner need to be disclosed in the charity's accounts? Well, I think in terms of the sort of way that one works, I would say that transactions between the club and the charity would definitely require disclosure, because I would say that in that particular situation, the club itself is what the charity SORP would refer to as an entity related party. And what the SORP does, it gives a list in the glossary in terms of what they call entity related parties and also what they call natural person related parties. Now, again, the key thing to hang on to here in terms of a component of that entity related party definition, it refers to entities in which a person identified in A, B, C or above, and that would include trustees, has significant influence. And if you're a director of a company, I would say you've got significant influence. So where the club and the charity have got a director and trustee in common, transactions between the two would definitely require disclosure in the notes of the accounts of the charity concerned. Now, if we assume, looking at the example, that the owner is not a trustee of the charity, I would say in that situation, transactions between the charity and those other companies would not technically require disclosure in the charity's accounts. But if the charity is connected to the club, it might be worth thinking a bit beyond the formal requirements of the SORP here and say, okay, what do we really need to disclose in the situation to inform a true and fair view? What do we need to disclose to ensure adequate transparency of disclosure? And what I've certainly found over the years that in these sort of situations, disclosing more than is formally required by the SORP is not a bad way to go, to be completely transparent. And I think in that situation, therefore, it would be certainly worth considering disclosure of the other transactions, even though technically it may well be they do not need to be disclosed. Okay, so we've looked at some frequently asked questions in relation to trustee-related transactions and in related party transactions more generally. What I want to do is finish off by giving a quick run through and reminder of the Charity Commission reporting obligations which affect examiners and auditors that might be relevant in this area. And we're talking about the need to report matters of material significance to the relevant regulatory body, whether that's the England and Wales regulator, the Commission, whether it's the Scottish regulator, the OSCR, or whatever the regulator is in whatever part of the UK. And yes, I guess the key thing I want to draw to your attention on this slide is that of the specific requirements do require reporting to the Commission, say, as a matter of material significance, one includes conflicts of interests not appropriately managed in the moment, and also non-disclosure of related party transactions in the notes of the accounts of the charity concerned being examined or being audited. I guess with that in mind, it really reinforces the importance of having a good handle on the disclosure rules in this area if you are an examiner or are an auditor, because you then know what you're looking for, which may require reporting in the event that that particular disclosure was insufficient in the circumstances. I guess very often it would be an issue which you very easily tidy up as part of your accounts finalization process, ensuring the relevant transaction does get disclosed and does go into. How often non-disclosure actually gets reported in this area, I'm not too sure, but certainly important to make sure you're very much getting a handle on the disclosure requirements, because if there was not to be a deficiency in this area, it would indeed need to be reported through. I think the conflict of interest one is an interesting one. I suppose in my mind, where a conflict of interest has been badly managed in the moment by the charity, that's a difficult thing to put right as far as part of your audit or independent examination finalization. So I think managing conflicts appropriately in the moment is really important to do. And that's why I think what examiners and auditors will usually do is very much get in their clients' ribs to really reinforce the importance of appropriate protocol and etiquette in that area. And I think with that in mind, Charity Commission publication CC3, the Essentials Trustee, is crucial reading for trustees just to make sure they're on the right side of the line when it comes to those conflict situations, making sure they are indeed managed in an appropriate way. Okay, so that's our session done. Let me wrap up with a few sort of key takeaways from my side. So I think, first of all, I would say here, this is a sensitive area for disclosure. And yes, the charity SORP incorporates more onerous disclosure requirements than those that apply to ordinary commercial entities that are following basic rules within FRS 102. The key management personnel remuneration rules are tough for smaller charities where there might only be one member of key management, as we've mentioned. Charitable groups do throw up loads of disclosure questions. We've seen one or two in the course of today's short session. And right at the end there, we did see the important link to reporting matters of material significance to relevant charity regulators. Hope that was useful. If you've got any follow-up queries following today's session, do drop us an email at inquiries@insight-training.biz and check out our website for details of our full Spring/Summer 21 CPD programme. Hope that was useful. Good to speak to you all and look forward to speaking to you all again soon. Thank you and goodbye.